Hello everybody and welcome to this episode of Full Spectrum Survival. We are discussing the eventuality that at some point in the future of our nation and the future of our world, you as an individual, your family, your group may be forced to relocate. There are different phases of emergency. You have your short duration emergencies that can be something like a wildfire or a tornado in your area, maybe even regional flooding. Could be civil unrest or a local disaster. You have medium duration emergencies. That's something that's going to last a little bit longer. You can't just drive away for that and then come back home to your castle or your domicile. You're going to be spending days or weeks at another location. And then of course you have your long duration emergency. That's going to be social unrest that does not go away. That's going to be events that are similar to the Syrian civil war, which has been roaring for years now. You have proxy wars and long duration natural disasters that make the area completely uninhabitable. You have nuclear emergencies. Look at what has happened in Japan. You have the tsunami, just that natural disaster in Japan. You could have something like a war breakout in an area near you. Or it could even just be an economic disaster that does not get better and the banks start foreclosing on all of the homes and pushing each and every person out of the city so that they can do something else with it, so that they can sell it to the government, and the government can then repurpose what used to be your home for somebody else. These are things that have happened in the past, and they are things that will happen in the future. You have three basic cycles of every government, of every empire across our world. You have relative freedom, and I would argue that in the United States of America and in many other Western nations right now, we are under relative freedom. Then you have overreaching tyranny. And I would also argue that we are in the stage from relative freedom into tyranny. Following tyranny, you have violent revolution and violent rebellion. After that rebellion, after enough people have seen the strife of that violence, they then look for relative freedom. And so we're in the stage right now of relative freedom into overreaching tyranny. And you can see examples of this all across our Western world. You have the fact that we have basically given the privacy of each and every individual in the West over to power-hungry corporations that then give that information to the governments of the countries with which they reside in. Every text message, every picture that you've seen and sent, every web search that you have performed, every purchase that you have made is logged by some corporation somewhere. That's an overreaching tyrannical move. Nobody should have access to all of that information, and the fact that they use it to manipulate individuals for advertising and social conditioning just shows you that we're just moving that much further into overreaching tyranny. When the Snowden docs leaked, it gave us proof as a nation that there is no stopgaps. There's nothing stopping us from moving from relative freedom into overreaching tyranny. And so we have to be prepared that following tyranny, you have a violent revolution or a violent rebellion. And how are you and your family going to prepare for that? A lot of us say that we're going to be better prepared by purchasing enough goods, becoming self-reliant and self-sustaining. We're going to make sure that we have our security in order so that we don't have to rely on an emergency service that will no longer work during a collapse or during a long duration event, and we will be buffered from that event taking place. However, there is a cost there, and that cost proves that the event will dictate whether you and your family or you and your group can stay at your location indefinitely. You might become a target to local violence. You might suffer a natural disaster at what you plan to be your 100-year destination location. Anything could happen. Local plagues and medical emergencies could drive you from your bug out retreat. It could drive you from your home, your castle, your domicile into the unknown. And so preparing for that eventuality that you and your family or you and your group could be forced away from your home, could be forced away from your castle, is something that we each need to take into hand, and we need to consider our own responsibilities there. There are 65 million people around our planet right now who are in an evacuation status. They're evacuating from natural emergencies, natural disasters like flooding and wildfires and nuclear disasters. They're evacuating from regional war. The violence has just become so strong in their area. Why? Because of violent revolution from some sort of dictating or overreaching tyranny. They're evacuating from economic disasters. They just can't make ends meet, and so now the governments are taking their homes away. That's what's happening in Venezuela. You have these events happening across our world where 65 million people, and think about that for a moment. In the United States of America, you have never seen, with your own eyes, 1 million people in one place. No matter what you've looked at with your eyes, I'm not talking through drone footage or anything like that, with your own eyes, you have never seen 1 million people, or likely have never seen 1 million people. So think about the most people that you have ever seen in your lifetime with your own eyes. That multiplied into the millions is how many people are forced away from their homes right now, forced away from their castles. And those people have had to make shelter, make security, find food, and do all of these things that make us human, that make us live on a day-to-day basis at a location that they didn't plan for. And so here in our community, we have to take into consideration that might happen to us. And so Kelly and I started a new series here where we are building an evacuation camp. Some might call it a refugee location, might call it a slum, some might call it a ghetto in old world terms. We're building an evacuation camp, a gypsy setup. There's all sorts of names for people who have been on the move, people who have been semi-nomadic but have tried to take up station at a location. What we have here is a repurposed, a once used canvas tent. Inside of this tent, we have a nice wood stove. And each one of these things, if you just have it in a box say you have your entire plan set out and your entire evacuation plan is in a storage location, or it's in your garage and you prepare that if I have to evacuate, I'm going to put it all into the truck and I'm going to get out of Dodge. I'm going to get out of here and get somewhere safe. That is a perfect plan. However, it is not executed yet. And so the execution of that plan, there are all sorts of pitfalls and all sorts of room for error. You could have the location that you plan on getting to be completely underwater. It could be uninhabitable. If you don't execute these plans in practice, you're setting yourself up for the possibility of failure when you have to perform these plans under duress, under the stress of the evacuation. Back to what we have here, we have a canvas shelter. What this is meant to do, it's not meant to be a home. It's meant to shelter you from the environment, give you a place of refuge, somewhere that you can find security and safety from the environment and the outside world. We made sure that the one we purchased secondhand had a tent jack, had a somewhere that our stove jack, somewhere that our wood stove could go out, because it's getting down to 29 degrees here in the next couple of days. And sure, we have 0 degree bags and we have that under, part of our preparedness plan prepped. If you rely on that every single day, someone is going to get sick. Our bodies as humans are built upon the fact that you can go into a shelter and you can get your body back up to temperature. You can maintain the ideal human temperature with little stress, with little endurance and little stress on your body. And so if you say, no problem, I can live in my canvas tent, or I can live in my 4-season fabric tent with my 0 degree bag indefinitely, you're setting yourself up for illness. And that's just a fact. If you have to do it over a period of time, you're setting yourself up for illness. Now, what about your children? Are they prepared for that? Does everybody have to stay in their 0-degree bag all day long? What about humidity then? Does anybody have a down allergy, or is anybody going to get what is known as like duck lung, where they haven't stayed using down or using feathers for a long period of time, or using a synthetic that they have a sensitivity to? Now they're exposed to that. What are they going to do? You can't exactly go to the doctor when an event like this takes place. And so you have the need for some sort of heating apparatus, a heating unit. We chose a wood stove. This is a guide gear stove that we use. Again, if you don't practice this now, and if you don't get out and use it now, live like a refugee today, live like an evacuee, you're going to run into problems. This wood stove, when we got it, you were supposed to be able to burn it one time, and the grill paint, the chemical laden, dangerous for you to breathe in. They say don't get it anywhere near the indoors. Grill paint that they put on it is supposed to burn off. In our experience, we had to spend 6 hot burns, so hot that it burnt some of the paint off just to get that smell to go away. And I'm talking roaring fires inside of there, and you had to do that outside. Now, if you're setting up your tent, do you have time to do that? That's not likely. Do you have the firewood ready to do that? Not likely. So practice that now and use your gear today. Because then when you have to use it, when your life depends on it, or the life of your family and your children, or even just a guest, you'll be so prepared that it will be second nature to you. So we have our canvas tent and our wood stove. We have wood that we are both keeping underneath this platform, because one of the dangers of having a canvas tent like this just on the ground is you're going to get mildew on it, because as the dew drops, as rain falls, as snow packs up, it's going to sit there and keep this fabric wet. It has a bathtub bottom, so you get about 4 inches off of the ground, but yet you still have the risk of mold and mildew. And that's another one of those things you do not want your family exposed to for a long duration. Let's face it, you might have to stay in a shelter like this for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months while you find or build something that is more stable for you and your family. Refugees across our world, and you'll have to excuse me, there are a couple of flies around here. You might have just seen one cross the screen. Refugees across our world have been staying in them for years. They stay in the mold, in the mildew, with lung problems and respiratory diseases because they have no other choice and have not been able to plan otherwise. Let's make sure that we're not one of those people. Canvas tent, wood stove, power station, because I need my communications to remain powered. So I'm using a power station, which we'll show in another video. I have my supplies set up, including cooking stations. I don't just have the wood stove. I also have a propane burner. Propane is going to be hard to come by. But if you can't use your wood stove, you need something to boil water, cook your food, remain at temperature, give your body that energy that it needs to continue on. So propane stove, propane bottle here. I have enough firewood to last me a couple of weeks. Every day is a chore to go out and get more firewood, split it, get it ready, get more. That just becomes life. You have games in our world for children or for young adults, or really for anybody who can enjoy them, that are really, I believe, a godsend. Games like Minecraft. What did that game do? It taught children that you have basic needs in life. You need to, first, get away from the bad guys at night. That is arguably number 1 on the list. Second, have your shelter built. Why is that? Because you have the rule of 3s. 3 seconds to make a decision with impending violence. Somebody draws down on you, you have less than 3 seconds to make a move to make sure that you are safe. You have 3 minutes that you can survive as a human without air, on average. You have 3 hours in inclement weather. That's what your shelter is here for. 3 days without water, and by the 2nd day, you're going to be so delirious and maybe ill that you can't find water. Then you have 3 weeks without food. So you have each of these rules of 3 that games like Minecraft have taught our children. So they, as they grow up and see the veil falling from the lies that they have been told by social media and by governments of the world, as they see those veils falling, they at least have that little bit of understanding that I need shelter, security, food, and water, or I'm going to get sick, and there's no starting over in the game of life. And so we have the ability here to follow those rule sets now in times of peace and make sure that we don't get caught in the same trap that 65 million other people have. I have my first aid kit, and you're going to see your refugee station, your evacuation station is going to look a bit like a slum. And there is little, you can keep it orderly and you can keep it nice, but you're going to have buckets and tubs and totes and wood everywhere. And in today's world of porcelain white drywall and painted walls and perfect stations, perfect houses and castles, it looks a little bit different. And so you have to get used to that and get your family, your husband or your wife or your children used to that so they don't look and go, oh, I can't stay here. This is dirty. Well, this is a part of life, and your ancestors lived like this for decades and centuries, and you have to get back to that root, back to that original part of life where your day-to-day cycle is food and water, shelter and safety. Start over again. So like I said, I have wood to last me a while, but every day I'm having to go out and prepare my wood, bring some inside so that it's near the fire, and the heat of the fire and the dry air in here dries this wood out that much more, making it ready for my fire when I'm ready for it. I have to go out and find new wood to replace and replenish what I have used. I have to go out and find and forage food. Sure, I have food stores here, and you'll see that I have buckets of rice and oats and a good deal of storage. But if I'm not bringing back in what I'm using, I'm working on wasted time. And I have to start thinking about tomorrow instead of just today. Food and water, shelter and security, repeat. Food, water, shelter, security, and repeat. This has to become your day-to-day life. And you have oddballs in there. You have wild cards. What happens if you injure yourself? Do you have the network set up so that your family or your group or your neighbor, whoever it might be, can help you out? Somebody gets ill. Do you have that buffer where that illness is going to take you 3 days at best, 7 days, at just a moderate recovery time to get back, bounce back from that? Because if you're ill and you're still going out into the dewdrop, the humidity, the nasty, and you're gathering your wood and finding food, you're not going to recover that quickly. And you can fall ill to something like pneumonia, walking pneumonia, which is going to take you a long time to recover, even longer, and worse results if you don't have access to medicine or an environment that is conducive to quick recovery. So all of these things, all of these cycles, rinse and repeat, do it again. Make sure that you have a rest station. I have these metal cots, which are just broken apart bed springs, a bed frame. And it's actually meant to be a full bed frame, and I broke them apart and have made two separate really small single cots. They're about 24 inches, I think 19 inches actually when we measured the wood to cut for it. Plywood on top, and then on top of that, it's just a sleeping pad. You're going to use your sleeping bag or your wool blanket or whatever else you have, fur from something that you have used for sustenance, for food, and skinned and then cured and dried. But again, that takes time, doesn't it? Make sure you have your sleeping bag ready so that you have that time to do those other things. Villages weren't built in a day. Tribes weren't built in a month. These types of things take a long time. And so be prepared for that length of time to happen to you during a disaster. Guys, this is just step one, kind of the setup of our camp shelter, of our evacuation station. If you see anything missing here, please let us all know. Let's talk about it in the comment box below. I put a post out in the community tab here on YouTube and asked, what do you want to see? Had a lot of great suggestions come up, from dealing with strangers, security, personal hygiene, feminine hygiene, going to the bathroom. So many good things came up, and we're going to cover each one of those here in this series. Special thank you to you for being here. To all of our Patreon members, I can't believe that 2020 is right around the corner. It is happening tomorrow. I hope that we are prepared for the turmoil that tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of people will suffer in the coming year. Love to say it's going to be a great year and everything's going to get better and you'll be richer than ever before. But the fact that we just had our largest holiday spending period and the largest spending period ever on debt and credit shows that people are saying they don't know what else to do. Let's have one last hoorah, one last go, give the children that smile on their face because we don't know what 2020 is going to look like. Because of that one indicator, and of course a few other, we have to look at the next year and wonder what is coming. No matter what it is, we're going to take it on together, become better prepared together, share ideas and things that we can do together. Thank you guys for being here. A special thanks to all of our Patreon members. We're sending out the 2020, first year of 2020 survival cards. If you don't know, every year Kelly and I we're photographers by trade as well. We go out and we create high resolution survival cards and we print them, laminate them, put survival information on the back that is relative to each card and mail them out to our $10 patrons every month. It costs us about $5 just in the process of making it to mailing it. And we don't charge extra for international, so there's a little buffer there. If you're interested in that kind of thing, don't join us on Patreon at the $5 level unless you really want to, and that's all that you can do. I would rather you wait 2 months and join us just for 1 month at the $10 level so that I can give back to you that much more. We have a lot of people on there. We even have a $1 tier. People who want those survival links that we give out every day and who just want to say thank you for what we do. And we thank each and every one of you for being here with us. Guys, from Kelly and I, my whole family, to you and yours, please stay safe, remain vigilant, and keep watch. This episode of Full Spectrum Survival is also brought to us in part by USABerkeyFilters.com. You're going to see the Berkey filter that I'm using as our refugee camp, as our evacuation camp filter, in use every single day. Also, if you use the code FSS10, you'll get 10% off of your entire order. And ReadyMadeResources.com. You'll see us implementing some high technology here, from communications to just things like flashlights. I, of course, consider that high technology. If your enemy is using a torch and you have a flashlight, you're going to be better off. To things like night vision. Visit ReadyMadeResources.com. See what you can do for your own personal preparedness. From my family to yours, please stay safe, remain vigilant, and keep watch.